Hello everyone and welcome back to the Offsite channel. And today we have Stephen Baxter from Baxter's Energy and Technical Services to discuss SAP10, which is applicable from February this year, 2023. That was put back from last year to this year. So, Stephen, if you give us a quick intro about yourself, and then we can discuss what the changes mean for everyone.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Greg. Thanks for having me on. So my name is Stephen Baxter. I am a self-employed on-construction domestic energy assessor with a background in timber frame design and building surveying. And I'm excited to have a chat about SAP10 and see what the changes are going to be.
Yeah, so these come into force for new building warrants from the 1st of February, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And so what's the new regulations criteria and how do we meet those?
So in Scotland, there was previously the target emission rate, the TER, which was the main compliance criteria in SAP assessment. Additionally, now for Section 6, we have new compliance with the target delivered energy rate, the TDER. The differences between these two compliance criteria, one is more related to your carbon emissions, your TER, whereas this new one is now related to your energy rate, how much energy this designed dwelling is required when you're assessing it.
So I take it and I assume that it's harder to achieve than the previous regulations. I take it they've made it more difficult.
Yes, when we're looking at comparison between current at the time of this to the new regs coming up, the targets are a lot harder to reach with some build types.
So it's kind of from.
Oh, you sorry.
So if you're looking at sort of where we are now, and what would the same building achieve? Would that be, or is that I'm in the right ballpark there with that, or what is the uplift? What does it look like?
It's the kind of thing where we'll discuss it a little bit more in detail soon in regards to the efficiency changes and what we can see looking at the different systems and how the percentage difference between what we are currently to upcoming in February is we are going to see the targets are going to be harder, and additionally we have this extra criteria to meet. So we're not just going to be looking at one number in the emission rate of your carbon, but also the delivered energy rate as well. Similarly to how it was previously in England, where you had the fabric energy efficiency, where there's a closer look at the efficiency of the fabric. Now in Scotland, there's a closer look at how much energy is required to run the house per year.
So this SAP10, it's been out not to the same regulations obviously, but SAP10 has been on the go in England since June last year.
That's correct, yeah.
But obviously it's okay. So moving on. So what does it mean for the fabric, and what are the new thermal bridging targets?
Yeah, as I kind of touched on there, in England, there's more of a focus on the fabric energy efficiency, this additional target we need to meet. However, in both previous regulations, it's more prevalent now that Scotland are increasing their maximum levels of U values that you can put into your building. So previously we had targets of say 0.22 U values for walls, 0.18 for your floors, etc. We're looking at uplifts between 15 to 20% on each of those fabric levels, wall, floor, roof openings. And then additionally, things like the cavity that could previously be at different levels, be it unfilled or fully filled, now it requires to be fully filled. So there's a much higher decisions need to be made on decreasing the U value and making it better than what it was before to achieve compliance.
And so regarding the U value of, say, a standard timber frame wall, masonry outer, cavity, timber kit, what do we have to do to meet the regulation?
Well, to meet the regulations for walls, for example, the new area weighted average U value is 0.17. So you can't have the total U value across the building for your walls averaged out to be more than 0.17. So if you have areas where you have, say, a hanging post, which has inherently a worse U value in comparison to your external wall, less space to put, say, more insulation, things like that, then that's going to take your average U value up. So it all depends on trying to get your average below this target of 0.17.
Yeah, and
The
that
hardest.
would be.
On you go, sorry.
And so I was just about to say there, Stephen, and then you can come back. So the assembly, frame to M35, something like that, internal PIR, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Sounds about right. From what I've seen previously of kind of standard timber frame U values with a background in timber frame design, that's if you're looking at a straight two-story where you don't have many different wall types, things like bungalows where we're just looking at that kind of construction with on non-ventilate when we're not looking at render or a timber clad kind of systems, that should be fine. But it's just to keep in mind these reduced targets for U values.
It's quite a difficult U value when you do if the whole building was like a timber clad into it. It's quite. If the entire building was that, then it'd be certainly more difficult to meet regs for that.
Yeah, and additionally as well, one that's had quite a drastic change. The walls have increased by about 23%, but the roof has also increased by 20. So now the area weighted average for roofs is 0.12. So when we're talking about a story and 3/4 or lots of vaulted ceilings, it's quite a low U value for something like that.
The mineral wool might not make it as easily.
Yes.
So, but certainly in a loft space, for example, it's you've got the room up there to do that, but where you have a coombs, if you've got a coombe ceiling, like an attic or a raised tie or something like that, it's going to be harder to meet that.
Yeah. Second half of that question as well, I guess, so we've talked about the improved fabric. There's also the improved thermal bridging targets. So previously, the notional dwelling that we're kind of assessing our houses against was set at 0.08 previously for the thermal bridging level. But the new notional dwelling is set to 0.05. Now, looking at previous projects that I've done before with calculated thermal bridging values, that's kind of in the ballpark of where you would be if you have lots of calculated bridging values. However,
I mean, so the credit details, I'm led to believe you're not able just to use those. You have to use calculate or defaults. Am I right in saying that?
I was led to believe this as well. However, looking at the software that I use I do still see an option for using Scotland accredited construction details 2015. So
Interesting.
there isn't any direct mention, as far as I can see, please somebody prove me wrong, of the being able to use the accredited construction details. But as previous, it's more prevalent now that getting junctions thermally modeled correctly to what's being put on site is more necessary to get you passing, especially when the target, when the building you're assessing against is low enough already.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, and we're looking at the efficiency and emission changes to the heating, ventilation, hot water, and renewable systems. So, what's the deal with those?
Yeah, kind of highlighted at it earlier. So with things changing, the efficiencies of some systems are more prevalent than others. For example, when I look back at projects that I'm currently working on that have, say, an air source heat pump, the target is a lot higher. The result that we're getting when you're looking at your EPC at the end of the day, that is relatively low on the grading. We're talking maybe middle Bs for your EPC rating.
Okay.
But the target for these houses used to be quite high. When we're looking at the target for air source heat pump designed dwellings now, the target is very low. But
Okay.
the dwelling emission rate has kind of went down to meet that. The things that we can see is that there is more of a, how would we say, a preference on some heating systems rather than others.
Okay.
People are more than likely aware that the phasing out of fossil fuel systems, your traditional gas boilers, your oil, things like that, are getting pushed back. And we're seeing that when looking at SAP10, the requirement of extra renewables to get traditional fossil fuel systems over the line is a lot more. Talking about large kind of solar PV photovoltaic arrays and additional renewables like your flue gas. Yeah, it's quite interesting to see these changes.
So, yeah. And so, what is the air tightness value, or sorry, is that being changed?
The air tightness value is still set to 5, I believe. But the interesting thing with air tightness is now every dwelling needs to be assessed. It needs to be have a certificate. It needs to be tested, and you can now no longer assume the worst case, which used to be 15, and you have to have everything tested. So you can't just assume the worst case and get over the line. You need to test your dwellings. So when we're talking about this will be to kind of your house builders with multi-plot sites, the reading of the regulations says test every dwelling. So it'll be interesting to see multiple plot sites with hundreds of permeability test certificates.
It's probably quite good for the air testing guys. There'll be plenty of business coming their way by the looks of things.
I think so.
So yeah. Anything else to note on that, Stephen?
I guess other things that people kind of need to be aware of when we're talking about the efficiency of these different the changes of these efficiencies of heating and ventilation, hot water. There's some kind of hiccups with ventilation at the moment where we're not seeing a lot of kind of improvements when looking down to MVHR, your mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. But obviously, for the end user, it's still a more kind of beneficial system. And with solar photovoltaics as well, we're seeing a reduced efficiency the more PV you have on the roof. So it only takes you so far. So it's the kind of
that
thing.
that was always the trick, wasn't it?
Yes, you would use a gas boiler, put PV on the roof, enough just to get you over the line. But we're seeing that the more PV you put on, you get diminishing returns. So yeah, also battery storage as well. Battery capacity is returning a very good results in the software.
That's good. That's good. So looking at the if we were going to do a straight shootout from something that was, let's say, A rated, and then we just flip it into SAP10, what we're talking, what's it going to come out as?
That
Roughly.
entirely depends. It's the kind of
Of
thing
course
where
it
you
does.
can put, yeah, if you put an A-rated gas system with PV in current regs, change it over to SAP10, it might still get an A rating, but it's more than likely going to fail in terms of the compliance with both your dwelling emission rate and your new dwelling delivered energy rating. So project by project.
Yeah. And so if anyone has any questions, I would recommend that you give Stephen an email, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you out.
I'll do my best.
And if you're looking for a SAP assessor, then you could do no worse than getting Stephen on board to help you out with that.
Thank you very much.
So, thanks very much, Stephen, for coming on to the Offsite channel. I really appreciate
My pleasure.
it. My co-host obviously isn't here, but I didn't think that Scottish SAP would be up his street. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Give Stephen an email, and if you have anything that you want to ask him, I'm sure he would be delighted to if you get in contact with him. And I want to thank you for giving your time today to update us on the new regs, which are coming out on the 1st of February. So you'll need to be ready for those new warrants going in. So with that, I thank everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks very much.